We are here for our last interview of the Get Out the Vote Coast to Coast RV Edition trip with the president of the Mu Lambda Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Brother Mikael LaRoche. And we're so excited to have you here. We're at the Mu Lambda Chapter house today. So we just got a tour, and it was a really amazing experience to see a lot of the history that's been put into this house. But super excited to have you today.
Definitely a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to welcome young brothers who are politically active. It's always good to see brothers and welcome them into it.
Yes. So, our trip is focused on voting, especially encouraging and educating 18 to 25-year-olds on the importance of voting. And so for you, I know you work a lot with the Beta Chapter at Howard University. And so what are some of the things you're seeing as far as civic engagement and overall engagement with voting and politics for this young demographic here in DC?
DC is very hard to put into the same American bracket, right? We are at the heart of politics. So political activism and political power lives here in Washington, D.C. So it's never been quiet. If you utilize Beta Chapter as a sample and example space, Beta Chapter has been active in the political space since Thy Kingdom Come, since 1907, right? And it's difficult for us to just say it required like a reactivation or reigniting. Beta Chapter is there. So the 18 to 25-year-old on Howard's campus is usually a voting 18 to 25-year-old, no matter what state they came from. And even myself, for example, coming in from a completely different country, you become extremely astute to the idea of voting and what American politics involves. You want to protest when young men and when your classmates in particular are all protesting, you become engaged. So political engagement in Washington, D.C. for youth is very, very high. Now, that is specific to Howard's campus. In Washington, D.C. as a whole, the youth are a little bit more disenfranchised. So they tend to draw themselves away from politics because what you see is what you get. They start to feel like they don't see themselves. That sense of misrepresentation lives for the young African American living in Washington, D.C., particularly east of the river. So as a chapter and as two chapters, in fact, as the 6 chapters in Washington, D.C., because I don't like to leave out any of the other chapters. We are all active in Washington, D.C., but it's a part of our calling and our beckon to really draw some of those youth to become aware more than anything else, because political activation isn't just the education side of things, it's also a sense of awareness, personal awareness. How do these votes affect me? How does my one vote affect me? Myself, my family, my friends, my neighbors, and all of the in-betweens. And then getting them to the point of actually understanding all of the different policies. So that mobilization comes from multiple spaces, and the chapters are all engaged in it.
And if I can ask this, specifically more to the work of Mu Lambda, what they're doing around Alpha's initiative of a Vote with People is a Hope with People, what are those conversations looking like as it relates to the 2024 election cycle?
So, fortunately, I'm not sure we are in our centennial year as a chapter. I started last year off with a gala, or we kicked off our centennial year with a gala, and it was, I guess, chaired by the CBC chair, Brother Stephen Horsford, who's I just mentioned, the head of the Congressional Black Caucus. All of those things are strategies, because in the graduate chapters, there's a dance, a fine dance in between going out and beating the ground and being involved in the rooms where decisions are being made. So to align the chapter in that space, another invited Congressman, Brother Bobby Scott, you have to be invited into the room. You have to be where they are and be able to actually speak in the same types of languages and tones to create policies and laws that affect all of us. So as a chapter in our centennial year, we kicked off, we trained the chapter on how to register persons to vote. We've taken up or adopted a vote center. That's one of the things that we want to do for November's cycle, because it would be great to see alphas just sitting down there as you come in to vote. You know, as a city, Washington DC, you hear about alphas, but to be able to allow individuals to really sit in the forefront or on the front line, not just picketing and not just protesting, but actually showing some of those true senses of civic engagement. That is some of the things that we are doing as a chapter. So involving ourselves on the Hill, because there are multiple brothers in this chapter. 202 brothers strong. We're in the 202. Fortunate coincidences. But they are working on the Hill. You know, they are seeing our congressmen. They're seeing senators. In Maryland, there are a lot of alpha senators. There's the brother Westmore. When you start thinking about alphas and aligning ourselves, I got a video from our brother Moore for our centennial. It's allowing brothers to see that as a chapter, we have a sense of political footprint and a blueprint that you can utilize to move the future of political activism in any direction that you want. Because honestly, it's going digital, right? Not just with the concept of AI and technology, but really and truly, people aren't leaving their homes to make decisions anymore. You're no longer going to a park to listen to people preach of their policies.
Yeah.
You sit at your home in your convenient space on your cell phone, pulling in that data and that information. So I've really fine-tuned the chapter with a lot of our events as well. We had an event with the first Attorney General, Eric Holder, first African American Attorney General, Eric Holder. That event, just getting people really in that mindset of thinking about the importance of their vote. And it happened at Howard University School of Law, working with Beta Chapter so that they get to see, of course, that continuity. We mentioned that a little bit earlier when we were walking through the house. I don't want you all to fall off, right?
Yeah.
And that happens. We have, within every Divine Nine organization, this is not just an alpha problem. I feel like I have enough friends who are members of Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, who are not active, right? It happens when they don't see themselves in these spaces, right? Just like we were mentioning, young voters and not seeing themselves on the Hill. Similar things happen in the Divine Nine, and as a young black man working to change some of those images, you mentioned that you haven't really seen very many presidents of alumni chapters that are young. That helps. It helps a young man coming in from Beta Chapter think to himself, oh, I could be the president of Mu Lambda. I could be the president of Xi Lambda. It doesn't matter which Lambda you want to be president of. If they see themselves, they see an opportunity for them to be represented. And that kind of bleeds itself into the political space and political race. You want to start seeing younger faces running for office. You want to encourage young alphas. I actually met a senator. He's 40, he just turned 40. He's a Maryland senator. Can't remember exactly which district he is, but Alonzo Washington, brother Washington, is from IZ, Iota Zeta, at UMD. That's where he crossed over. Being able to meet these individuals and put that into perspective, to see a young senator or see yourself in that political space is one of the most important lessons, life lessons that you will get, because it's just a sense of representation.
And if you could speak a little bit on, I guess, your background, where you come from, and that transition to American democracy as well, and what are some of the pros and cons you see of American democracy compared to where
I'm from?
Yeah.
So hopefully on this video it's cut at my chest, but my pants, I have on some Trinidad pants right now, right? I'm rooting for everybody Trinidadian is what it says on the pants. I come from one of the southernmost islands in the Caribbean archipelago, Trinidad and Tobago. I came here to go to Howard University, came straight into Mu Lambda after graduating, and spent 11 years climbing, learning, yearning, wanting to see myself in this position. It was an earned one, right? Respect to every single brother who came before me, but this was an earned position, and I gained a sense of political, as I mentioned, political acumen being on Howard's campus around young, motivated African Americans who wanted more for themselves. They wanted more for the country, they wanted more for the university, but mostly they wanted more for themselves. And to be encouraged in a space, I have a lot of friends who came from Trinidad and they asked me why you went to Howard. It wasn't the walls, it wasn't the infrastructure, it was the environment that comes within that, black excellence, that black melting pot of excellence. You cannot change that. And no flack or no negativity to individuals who are going to predominantly white institutions. But my drive came from the environment I was in. To see the first elected president of the United States of America that was black, Barack Obama, to see that happen live while I was on Howard's campus changed my mindset completely. To see the joy and the anguish, years, hundreds of years of anguish being washed away from the faces of my seniors, my aunts and my cousins. Those were some of the things that really got me driven towards the idea that I can make it here, because you utilize the term American dream. I had that for myself mentally. I said, I'm going to make my own American dream. Didn't know what it was, because for full transparency, I was an interior design major. I still, it's like, what are you doing interior design? That don't make no damn sense. But I ran track. I ran track. I was in homecoming. I was in everything. I was trying to not just be a number, right? At 07 or at 0297 or 4517 or something like that. I just didn't want to be that at.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Mikael LaRoche. I wanted to be remembered for the legacy and history that those who went to Howard years prior to myself had left. You see little benches, you see buildings named after them, and then even more so in the last few years, presidency became more real when I recognized that the president of Howard University was also a Trinidadian, Dr. Wayne Frederick the second. Dr. Frederick is cool as a fan. Y'all seeing me, chilling, Ray-Bans, Nike hat. He's just like me, and he was the head surgeon. He's a head surgeon at Howard University. Triple degreed or quadruple degreed from the university, but just cool guy, really cool guy. And that sense of leadership, and as I mentioned, representation, right? I'm seeing a Trinidadian running a university. What's stopping this Trinidadian from, managing 200 men? He's managing 20,000 students. 20,000 are the best and brightest.
Yeah.
How could I not see myself in that space? So I just continue to challenge myself and allow the brothers around me to formulate their own belief system. And this is going into my second year as the chapter's president, and I'm humbled by the opportunity, because as I've mentioned before, I've sat next to kings, to be fair. I've sat next to them and still maintain that humble spirit, that ability to speak to them on common ground and say, what, you have a purpose and I have a purpose as well. And they see me as their equal. And that in itself really is it's an awe-inspirational thing for me. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity, because my son, he should feel the exact same way that I feel now when he's in his teens, he should look up to me and say, hey, my father did X, and because of this, I can do anything that I want to do. So keep all of those things as a springboard, because it is the purpose and intent of the fraternity. The organization is built to uplift each other and to create a space for young black men to thrive, not just economically, but mentally more than anything else. And we are not impervious, and we're not free of any of the stresses that happen to us. We carry, as I mentioned, we carry a lot of burden on our backs every single day. But when you find a common ground in excellence, or a common ground in anything, you find purpose and you find passion. And to those, because it's kind of hard, I try not to talk on some subjects, but like denouncing and renouncing, right? When you find somebody who doesn't see that sense of purpose in organization, in togetherness, the same togetherness that happens within the four walls of the church, right? That the church is here to bring us together, not to tear us apart. This organization was built under the exact same pretense. You have 7 jewels who thought 118 years ago that it was a good idea to come together, to band us together, and me now, 100 years later, looking back and saying, wow, 2 of them came and chartered this chapter, and I have the ability to carry on their legacy. How can I fumble that back? How can I look at someone that doesn't see the value or the substance behind that type of legacy and not say, hey, I respect and understand what you're doing, but it's not real. That's not going to be for me. My calling is to continue to lead. My calling is to continue to change the atmosphere and the ability for others to see within themselves the opportunity to lead just like me. Because I don't want to be the president of this chapter forever. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that for sure.
Some work.
This is work. This is hard work, but it is rewarding work. To see and have these types of conversations with young black men who I want to see y'all on Capitol Hill 5, 10, 15 years from now saying, yo, I remember the conversation I had 24-5 Alpha Phi Alpha Way. I didn't tell you all that. We renamed this street Alpha Phi Alpha Way.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, it's like the only Alpha Phi Alpha Way in Washington, D.C. is here. To be able to sit down on Alpha Phi Alpha Way and be motivated and say, you know what? The bros in D.C., they wrapped their arms around us. They made sure that we were good. This is what I want to do 10 years from now. I want to see somebody from North Carolina, somebody from South Carolina saying, yo, I'm a member of the organization, and wrap my arms around them and help them see their way to some sense of success or some sense of excellence. That is the purpose and intent of the organization. Nothing else. We have a mission and vision that is straightforward, and we need to stick to it.
Wow. I want to thank you so much for your wise words. I think that one of the key takeaways and something that really frames our whole trip is something that Brother President LaRoche touched on, in that how can you fumble the bag when there's a legacy of action pushing you forward? There's a legacy of men of Alpha. There's a legacy of black individuals and individuals in general who are pushing for freedom and pushing for better lives for families, for their sons, daughters, all of these different things. We are now being passed this bag, this torch. How can we fumble it? We shouldn't fumble it. We need to get out. We need to vote. And so with that, I want to thank you so much, Brother LaRoche, for your words of wisdom.
No problem. If nothing else, as a frame, I would like to say thank you. I'd like to thank you all for taking up, of course, as you mentioned, the torch and leading the way with a sense of light and purpose. Please, please do not back down from the fight, because the fight is coming to us. It has come to us constantly. Change the narrative. Continue to allow persons who don't look like us to realize that we are just like you. Fight for the laws and legacy that you want for your future and your kids. Because brothers like Brother Oaks, I mentioned Brother Oaks because he's standing here in the background, but Brother Oaks, you know, he's lived his life and has a storied life. He drives around the country in an RV. Cool as a fan. Real quiet dude.
Ice
Still
cold.
that. Cool as a fan.
Cool as a fan.
Ice cold.
Ice cold. Ice cold.
Yes, sir, Brother Oaks.
Brother Oaks is, you know, but realistically, this is the purpose and intent of these moments are for you and your kids and your kids' kids, because the fight doesn't end here. You know, November, when whomsoever wins, the fight doesn't end with that win. You know, it's a quadrennial election, and people only think about it every 4 years. But there are local elections, and there are smaller things that matter even more than just who is the president of the United States of America. So vote, get out and vote. Don't hold back your vote. Vote because you are knowledgeable about your actual vote. Don't just throw stamps down one side. That is a waste of your time. Please learn the policies, learn how people's actions are going to affect your life. Brothers, I appreciate y'all. It is steamy hot here in Washington DC, but we stay ice cold. Not a bead of sweat on any of these brothers. I appreciate you.
Always.
Thank you.